I always thought I knew what real friendship meant. For years, I had this one person in my life I trusted more than anyone else, my so-called best friend. We grew up together, shared secrets, and laughed through nights when the world felt heavy. He was the brother I never had, the one I thought would stand by me no matter what. If you asked me back then, I would have said I'd bet my life on him. But life has a cruel way of showing you the truth. And sometimes, the truth doesn't just hurt, it rips apart everything you thought was real. Because the person I trusted the most was the one who had been tearing me down behind my back all along. At first, I didn't want to believe it. Whispers here and there, people hinting at things I brushed off, because how could my best friend, the one who held me up when I was at my lowest, ever betray me? But the signs were there, the little lies, the things that didn't add up. And deep down, I knew. Still, nothing could have prepared me for the day I found out the truth. The day I discovered that my so-called best friend wasn't just betraying me, he was my biggest enemy. At first, it was little things, subtle moments I didn't think much of. He'd cancel plans last minute, but then I'd find out he was out with other people who never really liked me. Sometimes I'd hear my own stories being retold in a twisted way, like he was mocking me behind my back. I brushed it off, convincing myself I was overthinking, because that's what best friends do, right? They make mistakes, they drift in and out, they have their own lives. But then it got worse. One night at a party, someone slipped up. They mentioned something so specific, something I had only ever told him, a secret I trusted him with. And in that moment my heart sank, because that meant the only way it got out was through him. I remember confronting him about it, trying to stay calm. He laughed it off, said I was being paranoid, said people talk and maybe I just forgot who I told. And part of me wanted to believe him. I wanted so badly for him to be the friend I thought he was. But his smile didn't reach his eyes that night. And for the first time, I felt something I had never felt with him before. Doubt. From that point on, I couldn't unsee it. The subtle digs in conversations, the way he'd compliment me in front of others but then cut me down when no one else was listening. He was painting me as the joke, the failure, the one always struggling while he looked like the hero who had it all together. And worst of all, I realized people believed him. The cracks in our friendship weren't just cracks anymore. They were fractures, spreading fast, and deep down, I think I already knew the truth. My best friend didn't want to see me rise. He wanted to see me fall. The day everything started to make sense was the day I saw the messages. It wasn't supposed to happen. I wasn't snooping. I wasn't looking for trouble. But when a mutual friend showed me screenshots, my stomach dropped. There it was, in black and white, my best friend's words, tearing me apart to people I barely even knew. He called me pathetic. He called me weak. He said I would never amount to anything and that he was just keeping me around for laughs. I couldn't breathe. This was the same person who stood by me through heartbreak, who cheered me on when I landed my first job, who knew every single dream I ever had, and behind my back he was making me the joke. But the worst part wasn't even the insults, it was the lies. He told people I had betrayed him, that I was selfish, that I was toxic. Suddenly it all made sense. Why certain friends stopped answering my calls, why people looked at me differently, why I felt so alone without even knowing why. He wasn't just backstabbing me. He was rewriting the story, turning me into the villain. And still, a part of me hesitated. I kept asking myself why. Why would someone I loved like a brother do this? Was it jealousy? Was it anger? Or was I blind all along, believing in a version of him that never existed? That night I stared at my phone for hours, scrolling through the messages, feeling my chest tighten. I realized that this wasn't just betrayal. It was war. And the person I thought was my best friend had been the one slowly destroying me piece by piece. I couldn't keep it bottled up anymore. The lies, the betrayal, the way he had been poisoning everyone around me, it was eating me alive. So I decided to confront him, face to face. No more excuses, no more pretending. I still remember the way the air felt that night. Heavy, tense. I called him out, asked him to meet me at the diner where we used to hang out after school, the place that had once felt like ours. When he walked in, he looked casual, like nothing was wrong, like he hadn't destroyed the very foundation of who I thought he was. I didn't waste time. I laid it all out, the screenshots, the lies, the secrets he had spilled, the way he had been turning people against me. My voice shook, not from fear, but from the rage I had been swallowing for months. For a moment he was silent. He stared at me, his face blank, and I thought maybe, just maybe, he'd apologize. Maybe he'd admit it was a mistake, that he had been caught up in something stupid, that he'd beg for forgiveness. But instead he smirked. That smirk still haunts me to this day. He leaned back in the booth, crossed his arms, and said, "So what if I did? You think you're so perfect? You think people actually like you? They don't. They laugh at you. I just gave them what they already thought." Those words cut deeper than any knife could. In that moment I realized there was no misunderstanding, no accident, no saving this friendship. He had chosen this. He wanted to break me. He wanted to watch me fall apart. And sitting across from him, the person I once trusted with my life, I felt something shift inside me. The hurt was still there, yes, but it was being replaced with something stronger. Clarity. The kind of clarity that comes when you finally see someone's true face for the first time. That night, our friendship didn't just end, it burned to ashes. When I walked out of that diner, I told myself it was over. The friendship, the lies, the manipulation, it was done. But I was wrong. Ending it with him didn't erase the damage he had already caused. The days that followed were some of the loneliest of my life. People I thought were my friends stopped calling. Invitations dried up. I'd walk into a room and feel the weight of whispers, the sideways glances, the judgment I couldn't escape. It was like he had built a cage for me out of rumors, and even though I knew the truth, I was still trapped inside. At work, I noticed the shift too. Co-workers who used to laugh with me now seemed distant. They had heard things. Half-truths twisted into poison. I realized then that he hadn't just betrayed me personally. He was dismantling my reputation piece by piece. And the most painful part? I didn't even have the energy to defend myself anymore. At night, lying in bed, my mind replayed every moment of our friendship. The birthdays, the late-night talks, the promises we made. All of it tainted now, ruined by the knowledge that he had probably been wearing a mask the whole time. I asked myself over and over, how could I have been so blind? How could I have trusted someone so completely, only for them to sharpen the knife behind my back? But the worst realization hit me when I thought about the future. For years, I had pictured him standing next to me at my wedding, being the godfather to my kids, growing old as one of those rare friendships that survive the storms of life. That future was gone, stolen, and in its place was nothing but silence. I wasn't just mourning a friend. I was mourning the version of myself who believed in him. And that grief was heavier than I ever imagined. One night, as I sat alone in my apartment staring at the ceiling, I felt like I was at rock bottom. My phone barely buzzed anymore. The silence was deafening. And for the first time in my life, I wondered if maybe he had been right. If maybe I was pathetic, maybe I was weak. But then something inside me snapped, not in anger, not in rage, but in realization. Why was I letting him define me? Why was I giving so much power to the very person who had spent months tearing me down? I thought about all the years I had built myself up, all the hard work I had done, the friendships I had nurtured before him, the dreams I still carried inside me. Those things were real. His lies, his manipulation, they were just shadows. And shadows only live if you let them. That night I opened my journal, the one I hadn't touched in months, and started writing. Not about him, not about the betrayal, but about me. My goals, my plans, who I wanted to become. With every word, I felt myself clawing back pieces of the person I thought I'd lost. Then, I made a choice. I wasn't going to stay silent anymore. If he wanted to tell his version of the story, fine. But I would live in a way that made the truth undeniable. I would show people, through my actions, through my strength, that I was more than his lies.
It wasn't going to be easy. I knew that. Rebuilding never is. But for the first time in months, I felt a flicker of hope, and that flicker was enough to light the fire I needed. This wasn't just about surviving his betrayal anymore. It was about reclaiming my life, my voice, my identity. And in that moment, I made a promise to myself. He might have taken my past, but I would take back my future. The first step was the hardest, walking back into rooms where I knew the whisper still lived. My chest tightened every time I saw the smirks, the subtle stares, the quiet conversations that always seemed to stop the second I walked by. For a while, I kept my head down, convincing myself that silence was safer, but silence was what had given him all the power. So I decided to speak, not with anger, not with rage, but with honesty. I started small, reaching out to a few people I trusted, sitting down with them one-on-one and telling them the truth. Not the messy details, not the drama, just the facts, the way things really happened. And to my surprise, some of them listened. Some of them apologized for believing him. Some of them even admitted they had doubted his stories all along, but were too afraid to get involved. It wasn't instant redemption, and it wasn't universal. There were still those who chose to believe the worst about me, who clung to the lies because it was easier than facing the truth. But slowly, piece by piece, I began to rebuild my circle. Not with everyone, but with the people who mattered most. At work, I stopped hiding. I threw myself into my projects, let the results speak louder than the rumors. And people noticed. Respect doesn't come from words, it comes from action. And as weeks turned into months, my actions started to drown out the poison he had spread. But the most powerful shift wasn't in how others saw me. It was in how I saw myself. For so long, I had let his betrayal define me. I had let his words echo in my head as if they were truth. But the more I lived, the more I proved to myself that I wasn't who he said I was. Every smile I earned back, every friendship I restored, every victory at work. It was like reclaiming another piece of the life he tried to steal. And with each step forward, his shadow grew smaller, weaker, less important. One night, I caught myself laughing again, really laughing. The kind of laugh that comes from deep in your chest when you feel genuinely free. And in that moment, I realized something. He hadn't destroyed me. He had only revealed who my real friends were, what my real strength was, and how much I could endure without breaking. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was winning. It happened on a night I didn't expect. I was out with a few friends, real friends this time, the kind who had stood by me when things were dark. We were laughing, sharing stories, living the kind of life I thought I'd lost forever. And then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw him, my former best friend, the man who had once been like a brother to me. He looked different, smaller somehow, not physically, but in presence. Once he had owned every room he walked into with charm and confidence. Now he stood there awkwardly, like someone who didn't quite belong. Our eyes met, and for a moment it was like time folded in on itself. Years of friendship, betrayal, silence, all colliding in one heavy second. He walked over. My friends grew tense, ready to step in if things got ugly. But he didn't come with fire. He came with something I never thought I'd see in him. Shame. His voice cracked when he said my name, and before I could even react, he whispered, "I messed up. I ruined everything, and I don't know why I did it. For months I had dreamed of this moment. I thought I'd explode in anger, scream in his face, demand every apology he owed me. But standing there, all I felt was tired. Not weak, not broken, just done. I let him talk. He confessed more than I ever imagined, that he had been jealous of me, that he hated how much people liked me, that he thought tearing me down was the only way to feel important. He admitted he'd lost friends, too, that the lies eventually caught up with him. His reputation wasn't spotless anymore, and in some ways, he was living in the same loneliness he had once pushed me into. When he was done, he looked at me with eyes full of desperation, as if begging me to fix the mess he had created. And that's when I realized the truth. I didn't need his apology. I didn't need closure from him. I had already built my own. So I told him, "I'm not angry anymore, but I'll never forget what you did. You were my brother, and you turned that into nothing. I don't hate you, but I don't need you either. And with that, I walked away. For the first time in a long time, I felt free, truly free. Not because he gave me closure, but because I had already given it to myself. This was the end of his chapter in my life and the beginning of mine. Looking back now, I realize his betrayal wasn't the end of my story. It was the spark that lit the fire I didn't know I had. For so long, I thought I needed him. I thought friendship meant holding on no matter what, even if it hurt. But the truth is, sometimes the bravest thing you can do is let go. His lies broke me down, but they also forced me to rebuild. Stronger, wiser, more careful about who I let into my life. Yes, I lost a brother. But in losing him, I found something more valuable. Myself. I discovered that real strength isn't about pretending you're okay. It's about standing tall even when the world thinks you're broken. I learned that family isn't always blood, and friendship isn't about years. It's about loyalty, respect, and truth. And now, when I laugh with the people who truly care, when I succeed without needing anyone's validation, when I wake up and feel peace instead of pain, I know I won. Not because he apologized, not because karma caught up with him, but because I refused to let his betrayal define me. That chapter is closed, that bond is gone, and honestly, I'm grateful. Because sometimes, losing the wrong person is the only way to make room for the right ones. This isn't a story about betrayal anymore. It's a story about survival, forgiveness, and the freedom that comes when you finally choose yourself. And if my story touched you, if you've ever lost someone you thought you could trust, or if you've ever had to rebuild yourself from the ashes, know this, you're not alone. And if you want to hear more stories like this, stories of pain, survival, and finding strength in the darkest places, make sure you subscribe to the channel, like this video, and share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Every click, every share, every comment helps this community grow. A place where stories aren't just told, they're felt. So if you believe in turning pain into power, hit that button. Because trust me, there are so many more stories waiting for you.